time to get down to the next Mr. GLOAT podcast, ladies and gentlemen. Today, we are going to review week 1 of the month of February, which comes to the world of professional boxing. Boxing, ladies and gentlemen, has been running on high, ladies and gentlemen. And even though we're coming to the first week of competition, ladies and gentlemen, you can't say that this is what sports is all about when you come over here and just think to yourself, what an amazing award moment, ladies and gentlemen. The month of February is starting out crazy with a lot of amazing events right now and a lot of stuff that's coming our way quicker than you expect. And there's a lot of things a lot of us people don't know, ladies and gentlemen. And that is first, the world of professional sports when it comes to boxing has taken us downtown as crazy enough. As of right now, guys, on February the 9th and Sunday, we're going to be involved with Super Bowl. Well, we'll have halftime show Kendrick Lamar going to be involved in the performance of Super Bowl. And John Balise will be part of the national anthem. I wish them best of luck for their performances for the Super Bowl show. And I don't know much about who's going to win because I really am upset that the Detroit Lions did not make it farther than you expect. Yeah, it is what it is. And even though you got to say to yourself, there's more to it than just that. Because, for instance, on February the 2nd, as of a few days ago, E.J. Tackett from Professional Bowling wins his second U.S. Open after having a similar moment last year ago where, E.J. Tackett screws off against E.J. Tackett in match 2, and then Tackett defeats Belmonte and Simonson, guy that won multiple majors, and they screwed themselves up hard by not even shooting 200 in their matches last year ago. And similar here, only this time, after Francis Lavoie got his win against Simonson, and then he messed up the first shot, but let's be honest, his shots were so slow, it seemed like Vi deserved it, but then he got obliterated after scoring a 238. Next match, he loses against Tackett with him getting 152 to 245 of Tackett winning. And then Tackett defeats Andrew Anderson with a 238 to 184, and I was like, oh great, deja vu. But you know what, guys? At the end of the day, guys, the professional bowling always has problems because the oil patterns in the U.S. Open are so complicated that any other patterns out there, you can have a good match or a competitive match, or you can have a bunch of matches that are just that not good. So, yeah, it is what it is. So, I guess we have to live with it. Also, congratulations to Graham Fall winning the Delaware Classic about last week ago. Competition was crazy with those first 3 matches being really close and Graham Fall barely making it to the finals, and then Jacob Buttriff with Jason Belmonte at the time when he was commentating over that match. He thought, oh, this is the Jacob Buttriff we wanted to see, and then he screws himself up, barely getting a 200 even, and Fall gets a 277. So at the end of the day, yeah, sometimes you have good matches and you have bad matches. And Buttriff was rated number 1 in the ranks of that seed and dominated it only to screw himself in the championship. It just goes to show you that if you're not at your peak or in your physical shape, you're going to have a bad day. And depends on what bowler you're performing against, depends. And even though the Delaware Open had the cheetah pattern, which is the shortest oil pattern, so it made me realize how I was expecting some gutter balls in that match, but surprisingly there were 0. Yeah, kind of interesting. Interesting enough. Oh yeah, and by the way, speaking about the cheetah pattern would only be involved in the Delaware, which is crazy enough, which means in the WSOB of World Series of Bowling, which will take place in March, we're only going to have the Scorpion, and we'll also have the Viper, the Chameleon, and the Shark. And then by March the 22nd, we'll have the World Championship. And that's about it. The other schedule, they also have those other tournaments like the Mike Albee Nevada Classic, which will also be involved that same tournament of the World Series of Bowling. So they'll count that for the heck of it. And the Mark Roth Holman doubles will take place in February the 8th, but it's going to be taped on March the 2nd for continuity reasons, and yeah. But yeah, that's all I have to say. Oh yeah, and the Grammy Awards, can't say much about that. I heard there were Grammy Awards at the time. I think, like, let me look it up again. Like, Grammy Awards, yeah, Grammy Awards 2025. When did that take place? February the 2nd, the same day. Sheesh, yeah. Like I said this before, guys, and I'll say it again. February the 2nd might be Groundhog's Day, but there's a lot of crazy moments happening. I don't know what to say. It's crazy. Oh yeah, and by the way, I even found this crazy. WWE Royal Rumble winner of 2025 goes to Jey Uso, which I was like, okay, Jey Uso, but yet again, I didn't think Jey Uso was much of that of a person. Like, I'm not saying that him and his tag team partner about several years ago before COVID, it's like they didn't get over as much, and then that feud with him and the New Day. But like, I guess due to their Samoan type styles and such, and some of the fans are a lot of African Americans, and us people like ourselves don't vibe to that as much. But I guess back in those days, a lot of people didn't vibe to us as much. So I guess I wasn't into the WWE. And there's some things I'm not into WWE as much today. And yeah, and let's not talk about when Hulk Hogan came back and how the crowd booed. And man, oh man, guys, I even did a reaction video of a crowd recording it, and it was so funny. And it's about to be uploaded next month in March. So stay tuned to that, ladies and gentlemen. I did a reaction video of Hulk Hogan entering in one of the shows last month ago, and I reacted to it a couple days during that time. It was so damn good. It was so funny. Oh boy, it was so good. But anyway, guys, but that's about it, guys. The real story for today, ladies and gentlemen, is February the 1st, February the 2nd, and February the 3rd. Guys, the results of American boxing in America has played a lot of amazing stuff. All of the champions have collided into a wild snooze fest. Now, guys, February the 1st started a lot of shows. Like, we can talk about other moments in February the 1st. Like, you could go to Mohegan Sun Casino and have some bare knuckle boxing at the time if you were there. Or you can actually go to a show in Extreme Action Park in Fort Lauderdale that same day and just have a bunch of people taking on jobbers. Or at a time you can go to Sanford of Memorial Gymnasium and just see a bunch of just nobodies of a born professional snooze fest. Or even go to Springfield and Central City Boxing to watch amateur tournament bouts. But originally, guys, the real story about everything today, which doesn't involve, because February the 1st had a lot of boxing shows happening much on Saturday. And when you go to T-Mobile Arena in Las Vegas, yeah, that's I really don't know what to say about this one. There's a lot of interesting storytelling here and a lot of surprising moments that's made some people think, well, this is not what I expected. And most importantly, that will come. We'll talk about February the 2nd in Dort Financial Center in Flint, Michigan, which was another term event, which is pretty awesome to look at. Oh yeah, the February the 1st at T-Mobile is actually promoted by Tom Brown, Samson Lukowicz, and Leon Margulis. I don't know about those two guys, but Tom Brown is the original person. The show was aired on Amazon Prime Video pay-per-view. February the 2nd, Flint, Michigan has been promoted by Dimitri Salida. And the program was live on DAZN by the Michigan Unarmed Combat Commission. While in Nevada, they have their own Nevada Athletic Commission. So, yeah. So not a lot of things happen on February 2nd except that one event. And there's going to be one more event I'm going to talk about, which is going to be the February the 4th Texas Troubadour Theater in Nashville. And that promoter is by Jimmy Adams. Huh. Interesting. And also matchmaker Christy Martin. The Christy Martin. So, yeah. Even though there's no programs at the time, there is live stream footage on YouTube that has all the fight films. So if you guys want to watch it, go ahead. I'm only going to review one fight in that show and maybe talk about the main event. But yet again, guys, those are the three shows I'm going to talk about. So with that being said, let's begin. February the 1st, at T-Mobile, the World of Championships has been on fire. We've been building up for this hype for a long time, ladies and gentlemen. After having Stephen Fulton trying to recover from his loss against Naoya Inoue, and Brandon Figueroa, a guy trying to recover from his loss against Stephen Fulton, which they fought last November 2021 after Brandon lost the WBC Super Bantamweight title at the time, and he did took on undefeated Luis Nure 6 months before he lost against Fulton. And even though he recovered from his wins, he fought, tied one fight in 2022, had another fight in 2023 for the WBC interim title, won another fight, and mostly we're here now. So he's been having one fight every year, while Stephen Fulton trying to hype himself up as dangerous as he can. After his win against Brandon, he had a win against Danielle Roman in 2022 by domination, and then got his butt beat by Inoue. He comes back in 2024 over 14-month hiatus to take on Carlos Castro and barely won by split decision when Castro knocked down Fulton in round 5. And it was a close match because one judge had 95-94, the other two had 96-93, 95-94, and Fulton won those two cards. So, yeah, when looking at this fight from afar, it was pretty obvious from the start to finish because the fight had its own interesting things to look at. Like, as a perspective, I was expecting a interesting 12-round fight here, and even though some people might have been favoring Figueroa because they just didn't think that Fulton was recovering from his last two fights with his Inoue loss and how he barely won a fight when he got knocked out again in his other last fight. So people thought this was the end of Fulton, and I thought the same way too. And I thought Figueroa was going to get his win back, and he was actually going to get a trilogy match with him and Fulton. Almost like how bad it was to see that, oh, great, Usyk defeated Fury twice. Great. Or how, oh, Katie Taylor defeated Serrano twice. Great. Well, no trilogies there. So I was expecting Figueroa to win this fight by 12-round decision. Considering how they squeaked out two of the scorecards 3 years ago when Fulton did have two scorecards, one by him by 116 to 112 by two of those scores, and the other had 114 even by majority decision. So I was expecting Fulton to have a hard time in this fight, but you look back at it, that doesn't mean there was a lot to it. Now, guys, this fight, I'm not really going to talk about this fight from start to finish. I'm just going to talk about the stuff that were surprising to me because I look back at the footage of this fight, and even though the only fight I'm talking about is the other title fight, which we'll get to in a minute, it is interesting because Fulton is 3 years old. Brandon is 28 years old. These guys have both one loss in their career. Figueroa has been winning great fights by knockout, and Fulton only has like 8 knockouts out of a good amount of just a few wins. Just 8 knockouts out of 22 wins. So I wasn't really expecting a lot of good stuff into this fight. Like, yes, like Fulton might be the short competitor and might handle himself, but I wouldn't really expect a lot to it than a defeat here. But surprisingly, Figueroa went into this fight like it was a piece of cake from the first round. He comes into this fight, they both lock up arms, and this is for the WBC World Featherweight title, by the way, so... And by the way, guys, the featherweight title, as before, because the title has only been on the line by a bunch of times at the time, because the last time the featherweight title was ever on the line is when Ray Vargas had a split decision draw against Nick Ball last March the 3rd in Saudi Arabia. And now the title is vacant, so pretty much. Like, there's a lot of crazy things at the time because it's like Gary Allen Russell has held the title since 2015, since he won the fight, won in 2020, vacated it, and then they had this fighter that I thought was going to make it big from the Philippines named Mark Magaseo, but now he became the bum fighter. He defeated Gary Russell, loses against Ray Vargas 6 months later, and then Ray Vargas holds on to the title for a full year and a half until he had that draw against Nick Ball. He never lost the title. The title was vacant. So just to let you viewers know, this title is vacant. Just keep that in mind. So, yeah. So the fight starts out as this. Fulton is in some bluish type colors and boxing trunks. And Figueroa is wearing black and white. And they come into this round. They're both dealing out with some interesting hand-to-hand combats here. When looking back at it, like, Figueroa did start the attack early on in the fight, but I think he was getting outmatched by him because like, he was coming into this thinking that he had it in his grasp. He had it. But Fulton was just outboxing him from round 1 to round 2, round 3, round 4, round 5, round 6, round 7, round 8, and round 11 and round 12. And the other 2 rounds, round 9, I thought it was Figueroa, and round 10, well, I still think it was actually Fulton, and it might have been. So I gave it 119 to 109. It was crazy, but whatever the judges saw was a whole different story because it seemed like Fulton's jab perspectives from each round were crazy. Like he came to round 2 where Figueroa was attacking and putting the offensive on Fulton, some of that. And then so in round 3, around 30 or so seconds in the 3rd round, Fulton throws this amazing right from upstairs, lands to Figueroa, backs him to the ropes, and scares him. There's one moment in round 4 when the final 30 seconds of fight that Figueroa was trying to go to the offensive, corner Fulton to the ropes at one point. But man, he did not know how fast those punches. Like Fulton was landing multiple punches in that fight. And even though Figueroa was trying to block him to the ropes to end the fight, like he was not getting a lot of punches thrown. Like he was landing punches on Fulton. It just weren't hard punches. And it just seemed like he wasn't putting a lot of, like he wasn't landing a lot of punches. Technically, Fulton was throwing more punches than he was landing them. That's how easy the rounds were for me to look at. Like in round 7, there's a moment where he just kept throwing that right jab and Figueroa was trying to attack him. He throws a body punch downstairs, cornering him to the ropes at one point, and Fulton manages to recover. It was ridiculous. Like the first 8 rounds were just Fulton, and I never expected Figueroa to have problems. There were times that Figueroa was landing good combinations at one point and something, but he was mostly throwing a lot of punches that were hitting the glove. Because you have to understand, like, I'm looking at it, like, there was a lot of total punches landed a lot in every single round. Like even though the first couple rounds were like, they weren't having a lot of punches landed to each other, like, the first few rounds were like Figueroa barely throwing, like, landing like 5 or maybe 10 punches in the first 4 rounds. And even though Fulton was landing probably more than barely maybe 10 punches or more in each round. And then it come to round 5, round 6, round 7, round 8, round God knows what. He was landing good amount of punches in every single round. And some of those rounds were clean punches for Fulton. He was just that good. He was just on fire. And of course, round 9 just had that crazy moment. Like, they were getting tired, and Figueroa did put some interesting work onto Fulton at one point, and he was getting him into the back of the corner rope, and he was hurting his opponent. He started landing a little bit of interesting punches at one point, but it was too close. The 9th round was a little bit close for me to say Figueroa might have gotten through with it, so I just gave him that 9th round. The 10th round, well, it looked like he was coming back, but just like Rocky Balboa and Apollo Creed 2 fight, it's like, oh, the first several rounds were won by Creed, and by round 8, Apollo lost the round, but it didn't mean that Rocky was going to win the other rounds. So, yeah, it's like he has to win by knockout. And that's what I thought. But Figueroa seemed too tired. Like in round 11, he was just swaying everything. They were just bumping each other's head. They were ducking their heads this way, and it was just wow. They were just getting tired quickly into that fight, and by the 12th and final round, it just seemed too easy to look at. But there was a moment where I thought Figueroa had it. Like Figueroa, with 1 minute 50 seconds of the fight, he corners Fulton to the ropes, throws multiple punches, and I thought, oh, he might have landed a good punch, grabbing the top part of Fulton's head and punching him down the same way how Logan Paul knocked down KSI before he threw that legal punch to the knee, which would have made Logan Paul win the fight if he wasn't stupid. But yeah, no, the fight ended. Fulton got lucky, but oh man, the scorecards were crazy. Like they had the scorecards of 2 judges having it 116 to 112. One had it 117 to 111, and I'm like, I could say 118 to 110 is possible, but not 116 or 117. Like whatever the judges saw, I just didn't see a close fight here. This fight was more abysmal of a second rematch domination than Amanda Serrano and Katie Taylor, or even Alexander Usyk and Tyson Fury 2 fight. Because at least Amanda and Tyson were winning some of those rounds easily, and their other fighter just got the win. But that didn't mean that, like, I only saw 1 round for Brandon. So, yeah, looking back at it, it was bad. It was just really hard for me to watch, but yet again, it is what it is. You gotta stick to your guts, and I was surprised. Like, seeing Stephen Fulton win the title back again, considering all the suffering he's been through for the last 11 years. He was a champion since 2021, since winning the WBO title, and then 10 months later, he wins the WBC, retains them a good amount of times until 1 year and a half later with his loss in Japan. Like, don't get me wrong, he's taken on some okay fighters, but it was tough. It was really tough, but it's great to see him again. But do I see another 9 years left into him? That depends if his body can handle it, but we'll see. It was a good win for Stephen, and that's the best I can say. He had a lot of guts, and I give him credit. So, by the way, before we get to the other title match, which we'll come to later, the card did have some interesting stuff. We had an undefeated female fight against Abril Anguilani in a 6-round fight, which was 4-0, taking on undefeated 3-0 Gabriela Tellez from the featherweight division. Gabriela is from Texas, born in Florida. She's 18 years old, and some interesting wins there. I wouldn't say her resume is that good. She's rated number 11 right now, and her last win for the NABF title was pretty tough about some months ago. So her other fighter, on the other hand, 4-0, I wouldn't say also from Texas as well. I wouldn't say that this woman had a lot to look at in her first years as pro. Like, her 4th fight was her best fight win, so it made sense that they ranked these two together to see which one will make it to the top. Abril was 25 years old, and they win a 6-round contest with Gabriela winning. The 6-round fight was pretty tough, and I don't want to get to words as much because there'll be another female fight that I'm just going to watch right now, but not yet. But yeah, the fight ended with one judge having it 57 even, but the other had 58 to 56, all favored by those two by majority decision against Gabriela, getting her 4th win. So yeah, she's rated number 11 in the featherweight. I give her credit. She's 18 years old. I wish her best of luck. They also had another undefeated fight named John Easter, 7-0. He takes on Joseph Aguilera, and he dominates a 6-round fight to get his 8th win. We had a little bit of a 7-0-1 fighter named Caipo Gallegos. Takes on a longtime journeyman fighter and picks up his win by a 6-round fight. Jose Benavidez Jr. is back in competition. He takes on a little bit of a journeyman type fighter, which Danny Rosenberg from Ohio, which is interesting because with 9 losses in his career, his last 7 fights have been wins. Or maybe it would have been 8 or 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. Like, his last 15 fights have all been wins since 2021, except one by no contest. But yet again, it is what it is. But his time in his career wasn't that good. He was losing against a lot of interesting fighters as time, which a lot ended by decisions. So, yeah, he was already a bum fighter since 2015, so didn't matter. Jose got him by round 5 TKO. And you know what? It was a good win. Danielle Blancas was 11-0 undefeated and the super middleweight. He's now rated number 62 after picking up his 12th win against Juan Barajas, a guy that has 11 wins and 2 draws. And those last 2 fights were draws against competitors that would have been wins for him. Like a guy that had 10 wins and 4 losses, and his last 3 fights were 3 losses. And that was for the WBC Latino super middleweight, and it ended in a 10-round split decision draw. And that took place in November 19th of 2020. So he comes back 4 years later in October the 19th, 2024 to take on a guy that had 7 wins, 19 losses, and 3 draws. And that fight ended in a 6-round majority decision with 2 scoring at 57 even and the other scored at 58-56, favoring his opponent. And yeah, Danielle won that fight by 8-round domination. So yeah, an undefeated fighter comes back and yeah. The last fights, on the other hand, like Kermel Moton from the lightweight division gets up his 6th win by round 3 TKO. He's rated number 89 lightweight. I wish this guy best of luck in the future. He's 18 years old. He's 2 years in pro right now, so good luck with that. Yoni Hernandez, 6-0, takes on an 18-3-1 fighter named Angel Ruiz in a 10-round fight and picks up by a round 5 TKO, which was an interesting win. He's rated number 28 in the middleweight as a Cuban fighter because as of Cuba, he's number 1 in Cuba right now. So even though he is the resident in Providence, Rhode Island as we speak, we have a Jesus Alejandro Ramos, 21-1, picks up his 22nd win. And even though he picks up by a round 8 TKO, he's still trying to recover from his Erickson Lubin fight loss in September, which whoever that guy is. And the last fights, Mirko Culello picks up his round 10 TKO in the final round after Culello was knocked down in round 2 by a guy named Olivo Christian Barrida, a guy with 22 wins, 1 loss, and 1 draw. And his loss came across a guy named Luis Reynaldo Nunez in 2023, which I thought that guy was an interesting contender from the Dominican Republic. That guy is still undefeated 20-0, and I'm still trying to see if there's more to it. The guy took a long 1.5-year hiatus and hasn't boxed since December of a couple months ago, so good luck with that. And yeah, well, he did pick up a good round 2 knockout against Mirko, but Mirko comes back, knocks him down twice in round 10 in the final minute of that round and wins. So, and that fight came close because the judges' scorecards were 87, 83, 86, 84, 88, 82, all favoring Olivo Barrida. And Mirko got him in the final round of the final minute. So, yeah, kudos to Mirko. He's rated number 13 in the featherweight. He's from Argentina. I wish him best of luck. He's 24 years old. He does need more practice, so I don't think he's ready, but considering he left his country and other places, even though he did debut in his career in his first couple fights in 2020 in America, but went back to South America in 2021 to box a few fights, more fights that day, left in July of 2023 to fight in September of 2023 against a guy named Rudy Garcia, no relationship to the Garcia. We don't know who Garcias are related with, so. But my point is, he has been coming out with now 3 wins right now, so good job. Isaac Cruz, well, he's still trying to recover from his loss against Jose Valenzuela by split decision last August the 3rd, the same event where some other fighter became light heavyweight champion. And surprisingly, he has won that 10-round fight. And that's the entire card for February the 1st as we speak. But there's one more. David Benavidez versus David Morrell for the WBC interim and the WBA regular heavyweight champion of the world. Now, this fight has cemented itself as a real good fight. This was I don't know about you viewers, but this fight was pretty good from start to finish. This fight had a lot. So David Morrell and David Benavidez and their first light heavyweight fights have started out interesting. With David Morrell being 27 and Benavidez 28 years old, they both come in at 174.2 pounds, which is a quarter, both around 6 feet tall. And David Morrell being 77-inch reach advantage, but Benavidez being a 74.5. I don't think that would play a fact into any of this, but there is some things that I do question of this fight for where it is. So Benavidez 29-0, 24 knockouts, and Morrell 11-0, 9 knockouts. I expect this fight to come out as dirty as it is. Now, Benavidez comes into this fight. He's throwing punches, landing some interesting shots here or there. And the first round was an easy victory for him. They're both stunning each other. Like in the final minute, there's moments that he's throwing ups, downs, downstairs, upstairs, and like Morrell barely trying to go forward once in a while. There was a moment in round 2 where we did had an interesting fight here or there where Benavidez did come to the attack. He did hurt on Morrell, and Benavidez starts throwing 2 good punch combination, and Morrell comes back and lands some punches of his own. He's on the defensive, and around the final seconds of the fight, Morrell comes out with another jab, and they just start hammering each other with their own punches. It was a good close fight, and it looked like a Benavidez fight there, but Morrell did come out in the end of that final second of the round, which looked like Morrell might have won that round, so I gave him the round, but all judges gave it to Benavidez, so who knows. And then in round 3, looked like another interesting round where Morrell did come in, but Benavidez starts the first seconds of the round. He pushes Morrell to the ropes, and then Morrell pushes him and starts throwing a multitude of punches. It was a dirty fight, and at this moment, I'm looking at Benavidez, and I'm saying to myself, oh no, Benavidez is actually having a new fight style, and it was a little bit tough for me because I have seen Benavidez fighting style, and I didn't see that. I know if I'm not saying that going 12 rounds of distance is a thing, but Benavidez has to be careful because Morrell has made a lot of interesting fights in his career. Considering he hasn't fought a lot, doesn't mean that he can go for a knockout. So I'm like, Benavidez has to go for a knockout or something, or else he's going to get in trouble later in the rounds. Morrell comes out to that round easily and barely, but then by round 4, Morrell evens the score 2-2 after winning round 4. He did throw an interesting, during the start of round 4, he scares Morrell again and throws a wild right uppercut, misses, almost stumbles, and then throws the left, corners Morrell to the ropes, and it's he puts a lot of offensive into himself, and Morrell's throwing punches of his own. But Benavidez was getting some rounds into this fight for what he was doing, but he had to be careful because he had to go for something to hurt out Morrell. He did hurt him hard in the final 30 seconds of the fight when he cornered him to one rope, but it didn't seem like it was that of a problem. Morrell tried to corner him to the rope, and Benavidez sure got what he came to get his money's worth. The crowd's going crazy in that 4th round. But then we come to the 5th round, and it seemed like there was something, um, like, I don't know. It seemed like the 5th round seemed like something was wrong with Morrell, because it seemed like Benavidez found the mark he was looking for. And then in round 6, he just obliterated Morrell. He went through round 7, and then there was one moment in round 8, and by the way, all of these were Benavidez rounds, to be honest. Take that for what you will, but in round 8, there was one moment where Benavidez, in the final seconds of the 8th round, Morrell actually managed to scare him up with a couple uppercuts and hooks, but nothing crazy there. Even though I did thought Benavidez still won that round, barely. But yeah, after 8 rounds of competition, Benavidez was winning the fight with 6 rounds to 2. And to make things worse, we come to round 9, and he hurts Morrell more. So Morrell is getting outboxed, but I'm not saying that Morrell can still come out with an unbelievable victory, because Morrell can still get a punch going and maybe hurt Benavidez. At this moment, I just don't think Benavidez was trying to win by knockout. He was trying to win deservingly. But he was waiting for that opportunity, but he can't wait for it sooner, because if he gets it sooner, before the final round, it's going to be too late, and Benavidez is going to win, depending on how kind-hearted the judges are going to be. We come to round 10, and Morrell at one point, the final seconds of the 10th round were crazy, where Morrell was scaring on Benavidez, and he was scaring him with throwing some punches and coring him to the ropes. And there was a funny moment where Benavidez was doing a Muhammad Ali or a Apollo Creed, Rocky Marciano, shifting his feet back and forth, they do this, which is crazy. I was like, okay, why is Morrell not going to attack him for that? Because he was showboating there, which I don't know why Morrell was doing that, wasn't going for the attack. He just lets Benavidez throw a few more punches at him, and then just let Benavidez win that round. And he dances again and shuffles, the bell rings. At this moment, I was being careful, because Benavidez is a little bit, I wouldn't say that Benavidez is a little bit of a show-off type person, or he's a little bit too over his head, but with 2 more rounds left of the fight, he has to be careful, because he knows that he might win the fight or win the round by decision. Doesn't mean that Morrell might pick up that amazing punch that can end the fight. And guess what? Come around 11, the first couple minutes, Benavidez winning the 11th round as he is. But out of nowhere, we come to 30 seconds left of the 11th round. Benavidez throws a left, and then Morrell. And by the way, just to let you viewers know, before we get into this, I like to remind you people that even though Benavidez is an orthodox, Morrell is a southpaw fighter. There's going to be another fight we're going to talk about later in this episode, where we'll have another southpaw and orthodox fighter. Just keep that in mind. And that does play into this 11th round, because Benavidez leading off his right foot, orthodox. Morrell leads off with his left foot, southpaw. Benavidez throws a punch, and then Morrell ducks or tries to get in. He picks up his leg, like he's looking at Benavidez's legs or something, like he's not looking at him eye to eye. He tries to get under to his legs or something, or tries to throw a body punch, scares off Benavidez. Benavidez tries to throw a punch, but then Morrell throws a great right punch that barely connects it a little bit. It was almost like a Rocky Balboa and Apollo Creed 3 moment at the end of the first movie, where they stop in slow motion. And surprisingly, Morel throws a punch but doesn't hit Benavidez. It just hits part of Benavidez's arm, protects him from getting hit in the head, and then for some reason, considering it didn't hit him in the head, it just stopped Benavidez from his arm because Morel hits Benavidez's arms when Benavidez tries to swing and hit Morel. Morel just doesn't get his glove to the face of Benavidez, but does stumble Benavidez forward, puts his gloves on the canvas, and the referee calls it a knockdown. Oh yeah, and this fight was also for the light heavyweight title eliminator, like the WBC or something, even though the WBA regular title was on the line, so this is a light heavyweight title. But yes, so yes, the referee's counting, and he does count to 1, 2, 3, 4, and he even looks at Morel to tell him to stand back because there was one moment where, because this is what happens. Benavidez touches gloves, he turns around, stops, referee tells him to go back, and Morel is backing up slowly. The referee's counting, and then he turns around after counting 4 and tells him to go back. I didn't know if he was giving Benavidez extra time because the round's almost over, because he yells at him to get back to his corner. The same way of how Lucien Butte, the IBF super middleweight, barely won that 12-round fight where he barely got back up. And then the referee was yelling at that Mexican fighter and goes back to ropes and counts 6, even though it was 10. So, at the end of the day, it is what it is. This isn't going to be the last time we'll talk about a referee's incompetence or something, but let's not get into that. So the last seconds of the fight, Morel is trying to end the fight or something, or so I thought, but Benavidez, the fight continues with the last 10 seconds where Benavidez is throwing punches, cornering Morel to the ropes, trying to win back his round, and fun fact, he doesn't, but then, ding, 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 the bell rings, referee puts his right arm right into Benavidez's armpit, and Morel throws this amazing right punch, but the bell rings, and God almighty, the referee says, time, goes into the corner, and for some reason, and then the referee's name, by the way, is Thomas Taylor. Haven't heard of him. He yells at Morel's trainers to get his butts back out to the ropes because it's not over yet, which thank God he didn't tell them to disqualify them. He goes up to Morel, gives him a 1-point abduction, and I'm like, are you kidding me? It was really bad because Thomas Taylor, it's so bad. Guys, I'm not going to say that the next fight I'm going to talk about in the future that's going to be involved as a referee incompetence is bad, but am I saying is this bad competition for Morel here? Technically, for a referee, I don't know. At the end of the day, guys, it was so bad that it might have affected Morel because Morel scored a knockdown, and badly enough, he gets it. Morel did win the round, but the scorecard for the 11th round for all judges, including myself, was a 9-8 score for Morel. He scored the knockout, got the round, but he lost that 1 point that, yeah. Does that still play a factor into the fight? Not really, because even if so, who knows, because it just ended badly either way. We go to the 12th and final round where Benavidez dominates him, and that's all that matters. And that's it. That's all I have to say about this fight. It wasn't a bad fight, but the way it ended, and during the end of round 11, I don't think there was a reason for it. Yes, the bell rung, but, Morel was stuck in the corner of a rope. How was he supposed to know? The bell rings, he throws a punch, and that happens a lot in boxing. So, but it is what it is. So, at the end of the day, guys, I brought the scorecards to 116 to 110, but it should have been it should have been 116 to 111. Either way, it didn't matter. But yeah, but two other scores had 115 to 111. The other had 108 to 1018. So all favored Benavidez. It was a good win, but the way he won it was tough to look at, but at the end of the day, I feel really bad because like I feel like Morrell would have had a chance to get more onto that because even Morrell was getting hurt in the final minutes of that fight, and he scored a knockdown on Benavidez. I don't think the scorecards would have mean anything because Benavidez was already won the fight even before round 12, but there was no meaning to abduct him a point. So did it affect Morrell in the final round? It might have did, and like he did put all that energy in the final round, but Benavidez just had more to it, and eh. I look back at this fight that both the titles were shocking to me, guys. It is crazy because Benavidez and Fulton winning their fights dominatingly was the way it is, but anything else about it, at the end of the day, I don't think it really mattered. It was a good fight for what it is, and that was about it. And it is what it is. Just have to live with it. It is what it is. I apologize for that, guys. I didn't know what that was. That was a freak. That scared me. So now, guys, we go to Flint, Michigan, USA, February the 2nd. Where was I, guys, at February the 2nd? I was watching the show. Now, guys, I already had to get back to church at the time, after church and shopping, this or that, or I thought when I forgot to shop. And surprisingly, after all of this happened, it was pretty crazy. Now, guys, I actually came at home at the time after the end of the third and final match because the third and final match was actually Joe Hicks versus Keon Papillion, where, or they call him Joseph Hicks. He won his 11th fight in the super welterweight against Keon by round 7 TKO. I managed to stick around to watch the celebration win, but I didn't watch the knockout fight. I came in at the time. I forgot to buy money for DAZN, but there was a live stream video on YouTube that someone was streaming, which was great for free, so I was happy to see that. But yeah, so Joseph Hicks, or Joe Hicks, is rated number 57. The other fights on the card were interesting. Debut fighter by female named Ashlyn Lozada gets her first win against undefeated Denise Moran. The woman from Puerto Rico has now number 76 in the super bantamweight, picks up her first win by rounds. A 6-round fight or a 4-round fight? Denise Moran, well, she thought she was going to make it big for her first wins, but yeah, picks up her first loss against a debut fighter. Price Taylor, a heavyweight fighter, defeats another jobber named Jarrell Nettles by first round KO. Picks up his 6th win. He's rated number 204 in the heavyweights. He is from the state of the Bronx, New York. So, or I mean Brooklyn, New York. I apologize. We have a 10-0 undefeated fighter named Samantha Warrington. She defeats another hype jobber named Veda Masiokati. 10-26-6 record, and she won it by a great 8-round fight. She was Samantha mostly from Lexington, Kentucky, known as the Heat, has picked up her 11th win after 7 knockout wins in her career. She was the UBO, Universal Boxing Organization, World Super Lightweight Champion, so she is a world champion. She's been in promotion with Saweetie Promotion since July the 27th, with the Claressa Shields becoming heavyweight champion that same night on the show. So, and that fight ended in round 2 by cornerman retirement by Samantha winning that. So yeah, it's great that she's getting put over in competition, but she needs better competition instead. So we wish her best of luck. And that goes the same for these other fighters, like Joshua James gets his 12th win in the lightweight division against Ronell. Ron, 16-7. Gets an 8-round win there. He gets his 12th win. He's rated now number 100 even in the super lightweight, but we need better competition for him. And Caroline Vieri, 8-1 female, defeats Carmen Vargas 5-2-1 in the featherweight. Caroline gets her 9th win in Canada, but her lone loss was against a nobody female that was 6-5-1. That's now a somebody. And her record is ludicrous, considering she's rated number 14 in the featherweight. So good luck for someone to take on that person, because you're going to need it. And the final fight for the show, before we get to the champion, was Leon Lawson III gets his 17th win after his first loss not long ago, back in 2021, against someone that gave him a show and a disappointing loss. He gets his 4th round TKO against a guy with 9 wins and 2 losses. So, yeah, that's about it. So, yeah, there's nothing about the card, ladies and gentlemen. And if I had to talk about each fight in that, this would be a long show. Like, I used to do that last year ago with Joseph Parker versus Joey Zhang, when I talked about every single fight on the show. But that would take too long. So I'm just going through these fights as best I can. But, yeah, the real show is where the last 2 fights. Now, guys, originally, the ring walk for Danielle Perkins versus Claressa Shields was supposed to take place at 10:50 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, which is around 3 hours from Michigan to Maine from where I am from Eastern. So, but for some crazy reason, by 10:30, they already, or 10:20 or so, they already had their co-main event, which was their second final fight, which, do I have anything to say about it? Well, technically, I don't know what to say about this. Guys, this second last fight, guys, I wasn't really wanting to talk about this one, but after I saw this fight live at the time, and then I recorded it at the time with some of the footage, this was hilarious. So guys, here's the thing. We have Brandon Moore versus Skylar Lacey. Now let's talk about the story before we talk about the fight. So Brandon the OJ Bam... Wait, is that Barn? No, Bam. So Brandon the OJ Bam Moore, his undefeated record in his career from becoming WBC USA Silver Heavyweight title in 2021 has been great. His win against some journeyman fighters like Rodney Moore and Terrell JML Woods, great journeyman. I give him credit, even though he's not a great winner. But when he does win fights, it's special. Or even his 15-9-1 fight against someone from Mexico in 2021 was another good win there by knockout. And even though his Curtis Harper in that no contest, which is, I don't know the information of that, was interesting. And he also defeated Elijah McCall, Oliver McCall's son, in 2023, which we'll get to that story with Oliver in the future. But after his North American Boxing Junior weight fight against Robert Simmons, it seemed like he was going to make it big. And by 2024, he was going to get something up. But then Richard Torres Jr., silver medalist in the Olympics, knocks him out in round 5 by KO in a 5-round fight for the vacant North American Boxing Federation Junior Heavyweight title, even though it wasn't vacant. Was it vacated because Brandon Moore won the title, but then 6 months later it stated that the title was vacant, and then Torres lost. And to be honest, the fight had the scorecards 39-37, and the other 2 judges had 40-36, all favoring Torres. Brandon Moore was dominated that he left the United States, and then in November the 9th and November the 16th, he had 2 fights in Colombia by promoter Jesus Escalera, the guy that got his butt beat by Jonathan Goudry. So, yeah. Brandon Moore left the country to fight a couple nobody fights, and now he's back in America as we speak. Now, Skylar Lacey is another story. Skylar Lacey is from Indianapolis, Indiana. Now, guys, a lot of these territories like Florida, Texas, California, New York are territories where you have to box. Just because you're from another state that you're born like New England or probably the Indiana territories or something like that, or Michigan or other areas that don't have a lot of success in your town or state, you can still get the heck out of there and go somewhere and try to live out. It doesn't mean that you can still represent your territory or your continent of what area you're living in the United States. But Skylar Lacey from Indianapolis, Indiana, with 10 fights, 8 wins, 6 knockouts, 2 draws. He fought in Mexico in his debut in 2022, and for some interesting reason, he was winning fights by knockout. Like, he was fighting in areas like Mississippi, Las Vegas, and places like Louisville, and other places. And by the end of 2023, like he did got like his competition wasn't that much to talk about in his first 7 wins until his 8th professional fight where he took on Antonio Mireles. Now this guy from Iowa, USA was 8-0. He had an interesting record, and his wins were far better than Skylar Lacey. And it was a 6-round fight that ended in a majority draw with 2 judges scoring it even, and the other had 58-56 for Skylar. But when I looked at that fight, I thought Skylar did win the first 4 rounds, but I guess some people robbed it there. So I really thought Skylar won that fight. He comes out in 2024, takes on 11-6 fighter that his last fights were a loss win, and the last 4 fights were all losses. So his other fighter in 2024 was a jobber. And then a month later, he takes on George Arias. Now, George Arias was 18-0 undefeated by 2022. But then in April of 2023, he lost against Jared Anderson by round 3 ranked quarterman retirement. And George Arias comes back a full year later to take on Skylar Lacey in an 8-round contest. And all 3 judges got majority decision draw. 2 scored it even, 76, and the other had 77-75 for George. So at this moment, I'm like, well, at least Skylar Lacey is fighting hard. Like, even if he's not in a good contender against these fights, at least he took on a good contender that used to be a heavyweight contender that was trustworthy. And he did put a good show. Like, he did 1/2 the round. So, even though depending on, I haven't seen much of it. So, but there was some interesting stuff because when looking back at some of the footage about Skylar Lacey, it was ridiculous because Skylar Lacey's highlights in his career of boxing, should I say, are not much to look at. Because Skylar Lacey and his boxing abilities at the time were tough because Skylar Lacey used to be an MMA type fighter. I think he was. Like, someone said that he was an MMA fighter or something. But yet again, I find that ridiculous because I looked up information and I did find a YouTube video called USA Today Now, which has 0 views, and it was uploaded 3 days ago. And it's just a thumbnail of an MMA fight, but the title says Skylar Lacey versus Brandon Moore, full fight, Shields versus Perkins highlights. So I don't know why someone thought it was an MMA fight, but yeah, ridiculous. But yeah, pretty much you get the message. There was a lot of problems here, and it seemed like, but looking back at it, shut the hell up. So it just seemed like that there's a lot of problems here, that Skylar Lacey didn't seem like he was a built-worthy fighter. Like, he was 6'7", 260 pounds, but Brandon Moore, trying to recover from his defeat last year ago, it just seemed like that all that energy he had last year was not there anymore. And it seemed like Skylar Lacey was just becoming a hype job. So Brandon Moore comes into this fight, and the first couple rounds were just decent fighting. Like, Brandon Moore was coming in, like, he was landing shots, And the first couple rounds didn't seem that bad. I wouldn't say it was entertaining or enough, but it was good enough for Brandon Moore to try to put some offensive work in the fight. And then we come to round 3. Like, at this moment, guys, this is the moment where we realize that this is the problem. This was like Lennox Lewis versus Henry Akinlande for their WBC title match in 1997. And that's what looked like it. And even though I couldn't find a lot of highlights or information of Skylar Lacey in boxing, the first couple rounds, there were times that there was clinching in the fight, which, looking at Brandon Moore taking on a guy that was a good clincher, it just seemed bad. It was almost like how Danny Williams lost against Vitaly Klitschko and then took on a guy that couldn't stop clinching, and it just made him a bummed out fight. And this is now Brandon Moore coming back in America, and now he's taking on a guy that can't stop clinching. The first couple rounds were mostly clinching. Like, well, the second round. The third round just got a little bit oblivious because, like, 1 minute left into the third round, like, Brandon Moore's throwing out a punch, and even when he does, Skyward comes in, grabs him, clinches him, and moves him forward, and they bump near one of the corners, and a friggin' cameraman falls, and the camera, and then someone said, go live to the cameraman that fell, and it was so ridiculous. Brandon Moore turns around. They cut to another shot of Brandon Moore turning around. The referee, by the way, the referee's name here, let me find out. The referee's name here is Steve Willis. The Steve Willis I have heard of. He's the guy that was involved in the IBF World Minimum Weight title fight against Shinji Oko versus when Pedro Tendren defeated Shinji Oko for an IBF title last year in Japan in July. So, which I have heard of him before. I don't want to talk about that. But yeah, they cut the fight and realized that that a friggin' camera dude fell, and this is the moment, like, after that was over, and then they cut to a cameraman falling in the arena, and then the cameraman falls back. They even cut to the replay, and then when they cut back live, it shows the cameraman that another camera person outside the ring on top of the rope is recording the other guy on the other side of the camera that's back on his feet. He waves to the audience at home, which is funny enough, but yeah, after the end of round 3, which was nothing interesting, just another round for Moore. Yeah, like after the end of round 3, you can tell that something fishy was going on. And it got worse. Round 4 became another interesting thing. Now, every time Skylar Lacey clinches, Brandon Moore tries to throw punches. Now, don't get me wrong, guys. It is common that there's fighters clinching each other and there's people still punching each other, which is something you shouldn't do, like punch in the back of the head. It says, but yet again, I would never do that. But if someone annoys me like that, I'm sure your other fighter or I'm going to start doing harmful things to you. So I look back at this footage today and I'm like, don't tell me that Skylar Lacey was so upset that every time he was clinching Moore was punching him. And this is what led to point abductions, because during the middle part of that 4th round, Steve Willis was giving both of them warnings to stop clinching. And man, oh man, he goes to the rope, 1 minute left of the fight, and then out of nowhere, Skylar gets into the ropes. Moore's trying to push him out, but Skylar gets him again. They're wrestling each other. And then I see, like, I think Brandon Moore threw the right punch even during the clinch, and then the referee said timeout. And he gives Brandon a 1-point abduction. The referee, the commentators are like, well, it is questionable, and the referee, they're just trying, like, the referee's trying to get some stuff done here. Like, he's trying to put this fight together as best he can. Like, Brandon Moore was the one getting pushed to the rope, so why abduct in the point? And then the fight continues where Skyward is finally throwing some punches, but at this moment, by the end of round 5, Moore is now attacking him. He's pushing Skyward to the ropes, and then Skyward has no choice but to clinch him. And then he wrestles him again, and then boom, 13 seconds left. He says timeout and gives him 1 point as well. So the scorecard for that fourth round was a 9-8 score for Brandon Moore, but it just gets worse because in round 5, 1 minute left in the fight, Brandon Moore throws a punch to the back of the head, throws another punch, scares off Skylar, and Skylar is just grabbing him again. Brandon puts his hands up, grabs again, pushes again, and then, by the way, the referee's trying his best to tell him to stop doing this. He abducts him another point again. The score is a 10-8. And by the end of round 5, like, we come to round 6, and it's just the same thing. Like, he's trying to give him warnings. He even goes to Brandon Moore's corner at one point, trying to tell him to stop this, don't do that. Like, at this moment, he's abducted Skyward Lacey 2 points already, and if I would say he was going to think about deducting him a 3rd point, I would just say disqualify the fight. Forget it. Round 6 was similar. He couldn't stop clinching. The commentators are pointing out that he's already getting tired, and he lost a lot of his energy in the first rounds of the fight, and he's already tired. There's nothing he can do. And the referee, Steve, is trying to tell him to stop. If you're trying to do this or that, I'm trying to stop you from clinching. I'm just giving you all the warning. The trainers and coaches don't know how to stop Skyward from doing anything. And that round was so bad. We come to round 7, and by the end of round 7, which was similar than the other rounds, Steve Willis walks up to the corner and trying to tell Brandon Moore, as he did in some rounds ago, telling him, look, just remember, if he's clinching you, push him out of the way. Don't let him start clinching you to the ropes. And he's trying to give him warning, but just remember that. Even though Brandon Moore, he has nothing to do, but at least he can do is try to push him out of the way instead of just letting him keep clinching you to the ropes. And guess what? We come to round 8. They're starting to wrestle each other. The commentators are pointing out this is a WWE thing. And oh boy, they're going to think right in the next couple minutes. Because 23 seconds into the fight, guess what? They're wrestling each other. Steve Willis says timeout again. Gives him another 3rd point penalty. And I'm like, come on, just disqualify him. And the referee is telling him so much, like, oh, you're holding him, man. But just once you get there, once you keep your hands through, it gets, like, most of the commentators, like, he's smothering everything. Like he should be pushing, using his body weight. He's not fighting. He's not doing everything. And there's a moment where Skyward Lacey, this is where I thought the fight was over. He's clinching Brandon Moore again, and then boom, Brandon Moore is like grabbing part of, like Skyward's grabbing part of his arm. He misses the rope. It looks like Brandon Moore is getting out of the way. He's behind his back. He's throwing multiple punches, and the referee stops it, which is like, might as well just end the fight there. And he's just wrestling him every single way. It was just, like, at that moment, seeing Brandon Moore throw those crazy heavy punches while in the clinching move, I didn't know why Steve Willis didn't stop the fight there. I don't know why he didn't stop it there. Because seconds later, they're back into the ring. He throws a punch. Brandon throws another left punch, and for some reason, Skyward goes up, goes under, grabs his body like it's an MMA thing, Kurt Angle, and I thought maybe, well, you might as well go for the Olympic Slam, and I thought, oh, great. Well, great, they're going to clinch in the ropes again. The referee's going to stop it, and guess what? Brandon is getting pushed to the back with Skyward with his head right over here, grabbing him down with his head right to his buttocks, and he's pushing him forward to the ropes, and my oh my, his butt, like Brandon Moore's butt slips down, his head goes back to underneath the 2 ropes. Like, if you watch the fight, you'll understand what I'm talking about. In the middle of the 3rd rope and the 2nd rope, and Skyward goes with him. He spears him through a table outside the ring, and the crowd is going bananas down through a table. greatest thing of mankind. Dude, Henry Akiwande and Lennox Lewis could have never come up with a better story-filled moment like that ever. Or even how Danny Williams, or even how Danny Williams once got involved with that one time. Like, it's so ridiculous. Like, it was so, like, I don't know what to say. It was so crazy. I was shocked when I saw that. Like, no one can even find this fight to be crazy than how Danny Williams took on that guy named Zoltan Patrani in 2005 after his Klitschko loss. This one right here cemented craziness in boxing when it comes to a fighter that can't stop holding a fighter that much. It was the craziest thing of mankind. But the referee decides to give them a 20 count. The fight stopped with 46 seconds of the round. But on BoxRec it says 51 seconds of the fight ended. But the time clock on TV on DAZN says 2 minutes and 14 seconds left. So it was 46 seconds. The camera cuts to Steve Willis counting 6, 7, 8. He's saying whoever gets back to the count of 20. It's a count of 20? What is this? Japanese professional wrestling? Like, I heard Japan has their own saying that if you don't get back to the ring at the count of 20, it's over. Like, what? It's what? What country are we from, man? What? And then after he counts to 13 or 14 or so, Skylar's picked up his right leg to the back. Brandon Moore's back is right here, but part of his feet are on top of the canvas of the ring, while Skylar Lacey's feet are still stuck to the one bottom of the layer of rope. So part of his body is still half like this, but still trying to wrestle. And now he's trying to wrestle while I'm trying to push Brandon Moore down to stop him from getting back to the ring at a count of 20. Steve Willis realizes that. And at the count of 14, they're wrestling each other. He's trying to stop Brandon Moore from getting his butt back to the ring. And none of the people, none of the commentators, there's one guy with a cap and a red jacket on, and other people looking at them. Like, no one's stopping this. The rule is people that are outside of the ring, whether if a boxer falls down or if he's actually hurt, people aren't supposed to touch the fighters, or else if they try to get them back up or touch them, it's a disqualification. So all the people out in the arena are just standing there still, just seeing Skylar Lacey just wrestling Brandon Moore, trying to stop him from getting back in the ring. Are you kidding me? And Steve Willis is like, that's it, that's enough, that's it, fight's over. Like, the fight ends when Skylar Lacey picks up his, I think Brandon Moore grabbed him, and or maybe Skylar Lacey fell forward again because his feet finally leaves the rope of the canvas and falls down with Brandon. And as he's now gets his final body down to the ground, the referee's like, that's it, the fight's over, that's it. Brandon Moore gets back up. It's crazy. There's a blonde woman behind the background of the other side of the ring with her mouth like this, with an iPhone like this going. And Steve Willis is like, that's it, fight's over, fight's over. Brandon Moore gets back to the ring, and he just does what he does. He just, oh, all right, winner, yay. And then he looks to the other side of the rope and goes, and Skylar Lacey gets back to the ring, and Brandon Moore is doing his wiggle dance, and the crowds are crazy. Guys, this fight, I give this fight a 0 out of 10. This has to be one of the worst boxing fight in the history of mankind. I have to say, even though Zhou Zhang versus Tate in 2014 was a really dumb fight, and I gave that a 0 out of 10 as well, like, was this fight boring? No. Well, the first couple rounds were not much of entertainment, but like they were starter-ups because you want the fight to end. I wanted the fight to end because 10:50 p.m. is when the Claressa Shields versus Danielle Perkins starts. Their ring walk, but we had to wait an extra half an hour until 11:30 p.m. until the fight started. So yeah, it was crazy. They show us the replay. They show us everything. They show us how the table smashed down to earth and the tables, all of the equipment, lighting equipment, everything goes down. They show us another angle of Skylar Lacey trying to stop Brandon Moore, and Brandon pushes him through his body and gets back to the ring. It was crazy. It was a crazy fight, but it was just like, guys, I will give credit. I'm not going to say that Steve Willis did a bad job. Like, guys, if I was in Steve Willis's shoes, I would be a little bit bad as well. Because, guys, if I was in Steve Willis's shoes that day, I would be like, you might as well just say, call the fight there. Because I just didn't really think Steve Willis would just continue the fight. Because if I would have said to myself the first seconds of that fight, Skylar was being that vicious to Brandon Moore, and then Steve Willis deducted him a third point, I would be like, screw the third point deduction. That's like 3 strikes. And I'm just going to say disqualification because I don't want no one else to get hurt, or to say this match is a waste of time because it was a waste of time. But no, Steve Willis continues the fight, and then seconds later, boom, they get out to the ring, and that's it. So technically, I would have just ended the fight there and just say, hey, instead of giving you a third point deduction, I would just call the fight. That's what I would have done. And even though Steve Willis has been a referee for a good amount of time in his career, but even though he's been involved since 2003, and he's done it for 22 years now, and even as a judge, he's only started being a judge a year and a half ago in one country, but he's only been a full-time referee since. So I wouldn't really say he's bad, but at the same time, this was a really hard fight to deal with. It is what it is, but what else can you say? Brandon Moore picks up the win, but at this moment, I just don't think there's nothing good about Brandon Moore anymore at this moment. I feel like Brandon Moore's career in boxing after this fight became the straw that broke the camel's back. And that's the end of Brandon Moore here. Like, I can see Brandon Moore having another fight this year, probably, because he's had 19 professional fights, and I do want to see another one right now this year to see what he does. He's rated number 69, but this fight really didn't help him. Like, yes, he's the IBF USBA Heavyweight Championship, but yet again, do I even want to put him in a title match right now? After his loss against Richard Torres last year ago? No. Brandon Moore, I'm sorry, but I just don't think your career's gonna come back anymore. Like, it was a great moment, but this right here was not a good heavyweight fight for him, so yeah, not that good. Okay, so we lead to the final main event for the WBC, defending WBC and now the vacant IBF and the inaugural WBA and the inaugural WBO titles are on the line. Claressa Shields versus Danielle Perkins. I apologize. I don't know why that weird audio thing happens. But yet again, guys, Danielle Perkins, 42 years old. Like, her age is not there to be saying so. Like, she has 5 wins, 2 losses, 2 knockouts, and she's a southpaw fighter, 6 feet tall, 72-inch reach advantage. She's 177.25 pounds. 72 reach advantage, southpaw, not bad, but her age difference at 42 years old is not there. Like, Claressa Shields, I wouldn't really say she's that much of a fighter to talk about, but 29 years old, 5'8", 173.5 pounds at 68 reach advantage. Not really there, or I just I really don't know what to say about that. Like, Claressa Shields being at that weight, because people say if you're at 175 pounds or over, you're a heavyweight, but if you're at 168 over to under 175, then you're light heavyweight. So, but yeah, that still questions me to this day. Why? And I'm sure some of you people don't know that, and I keep repeating that online ever since. So, yeah, who knows? Still, I will say though, the build up to this fight has got some fans thinking that it's going to be an interesting fight because Danielle Perkins recovered from a incident where she was involved in a car accident when she was leaving a store and got involved, and she had to come through those obstacles at the time. She's a former basketball player, but her age difference and seeing her how she came back a few years ago in a hiatus because there wasn't a lot of competition there, world champion, but still her height difference was there. While Claressa Shields, orthodox medalist, undisputed, getting her fourth undisputed, two-time middleweight undisputed, super welterweight undisputed, and now a heavyweight undisputed. This is history. So this fight started out pretty decently. Like, Claressa Shields, as I expected her to get through in jabs. And I will give credit for Danielle Perkins. I love in the first minute of the fight, she was trying to scare off Claressa Shields with a little bit of jabs with her right at one point. And there was times that she was putting some interesting effort on trying to attack Shields at one point, and then Shields backs off in the defensive side. They do go counterclockwise once in a while, and then she lands punches, and then they go clockwise, and then Claressa Shields just lays out punches. And Perkins tried her best to scare her out with some jabs once in a while, which weren't that much to look at, but I'll give her credit for trying to make something interesting of this fight. But nothing much there. And then we come to round two, which, looking back at it, I actually thought Danielle Perkins won round two. Like, she actually landed some jabs early in the first seconds of the fight and then scared off Shields, and Shields scared her off, and she was cornering her to the ropes instead. And then Danielle Perkins recovers, and then the final seconds of the fight were close enough where I thought it seemed like Perkins did come back strong, and then they were throwing barrage of punches at the end where she was cornering Shields to the ropes at the end, and they were throwing a lot of sloppy punches once in a while, and then the bell rung, and then there was one time where Shields threw a wild right punch upstairs and missed, and the bell rung. And I thought to myself, you know what, I'll just give Perkins that round just for the heck of it. I'm sure some fans are going to give it to Shields, but you know what, Perkins did an okay job in that second round, and I'm sure some fans would think the same way, so, but it's up to you viewers to decide about that. Who knows? And then we come to round three, which was a little bit ridiculous. They're coming over, they're putting I really don't know how to explain what happened in the third round because I was scared. I thought the fight was over because 15 seconds of the fight, they're stunning each other, they're holding each other, and then Perkins, she's stunning with her right, and then she's going to go for a left, and then Shields goes forward in a quick, fast pace, goes out for the left, and then turns it. Instead of going to a left jab, she goes straight for a right jab. Perkins throws the left, and I think Shields manages to dodge it to the left or something. Like, she manages to dodge it. She goes forward into Perkins' feet on her southpaw and throws this amazing right punch and hurts Perkins. She backs into the ropes. She's throwing more punches. The crowd is going crazy, and she corners her to the ropes. And this is the moment where it got crazy. She's throwing more punches. They start clinching each other. And Perkins, like, at this moment, I already put my money on Topology.com saying that Claressa Shields is going to win by round 7 TKO. Well, I was wrong. She'll never get another knockout again. But yeah, Perkins trying to throw some swing-ins once in a while, but she gets stuck. She clinches Claressa Shields with 50 seconds of the fight, and then she pushes her out of the way. The referee's trying to back both of them away to each other. But then it seemed like the referee got a little bit too close because it seemed like Perkins' left foot gave out on her, and then she stumbled with her feet, with her footing, hits the canvas, but it was not count. The referee gets her to stand back up. 40 seconds after the fight. She tries to recover, and the crowd's already expecting this fight to go to an end here, but I think Shields lost a lot of her energy, so she's going to save her stamina. But she did put in a good work. Perkins did try to come back at the end, but there was nothing interesting about that round other than the craziness. In round 4 was another good Perkins moment where she was trying to throw some interesting punches, scare Shields off, go put her into a corner. Like, Perkins is the offensive type fighter and Shields is the defensive fighter. And surprisingly, she was putting in okay work into that. But Shields was connecting multiple punches once in a while, and it was pretty good. The fight came to an end where the bell somehow almost rung, where Perkins threw a left punch or something, and it got Claressa Shields to stumble way to the other side, and she just puts her hands up, and Perkins just stands there doing nothing. And then the fight ends, which I question myself because I don't know why Perkins didn't do nothing there, but I guess she didn't expect Shields to stumble. We come to round 5, and the first minute of the fight didn't have a lot other than Shields just jabbing out the fight and Perkins doing the same thing, just trying to be on the offensive side. 30 seconds into the fight, they start clinching each other and start throwing punches while in the clinch. And then in round 6, Perkins is already now trying to scare off Shields and trying to corner her to the corner again, but it fails. And then Shields starts throwing multitude of punches that were clean. Like, there were times that Perkins was landing okay punches, but they weren't always there that much. And then we come to round 7. It was actually probably the best good round I really enjoyed for Shields. Shields used a lot of her energy in round 6, which made me upset because I thought to myself that she's going to take it easy in round 7. And guess what? Shields took it easy in round 7. Like, she did go for something in the final 30 seconds of the 7th round and tried to throw some punches there and hurt on Perkins. And then I thought the fight was over when they were throwing clinches and she was cornering Perkins to the ropes or something. And I was shocked that she didn't get knocked out of the fight. And I was upset I didn't get the round 7 knockout win. And I'm sure people that voted round 7 for knockout didn't expect much, but I just wish there was more to it. And then we come to round 8, which at this moment, round 8 was a good round for Shields. Perkins was scaring Shields in the first seconds of the 8th round. They were both putting gloves near their mouths, their sockets, everything else. It was a pretty interesting round, but yet again, Perkins didn't go nowhere into that round. It was another good round for Shields. But round 9 was probably the better round for Shields. I mean, Perkins. Perkins comes in, and with 30 seconds left of the fight, Shields got over too confident, and then Perkins got her instead, and she managed to overcome the obstacles. And I was like, crap, is this going to be the end of Shields? Is she going to last the final 3 minutes of this round? She's putting her left glove into Shields and starts throwing punches while in the corner ropes, and the referee stops and tells her to stop that. And she continues to scare off Shields again in that round until the end. It was a pretty good round for Perkins, and I thought Shields might have got a little bit over too confident in that fight, but she got herself there at the end, and by the 10th round, it just seemed like that they were just going to take it easy and just go 10 rounds by decision. And Perkins did scare off Shields again, which was another good round. I'll say, though, Perkins was doing a good job in the final round, throwing punches, connecting, cornering Shields to the ropes again in the 10th round, which is something I really want to be careful for Shields in the future if she ever does that again. Perkins, I almost thought Perkins was going to win this 10th round and end it with a bang. And I would have thought to myself, you know what, 97-93, it was a good fight. Perkins did show herself at the end. And Claressa was coming back. They even went to another corner rope with 30 seconds to go. And even though Perkins wasn't landing a lot cleaner punches than Shields, she was doing a good job in that 10th round. And I thought she was going to win that round. But then with 22 seconds after the fight ends like this. Perkins throws a right jab, misses. They both corner each other ropes. And then Shields throws a left, scares Perkins, but then she goes for it again. And with 15 seconds left, She's trying to go for something. Instead of going for a right, she studies for a great left jab. Shields dodges right, throws a right, down. And Perkins' eyeballs goes to the back of her head, touches the gloves of the canvas. The crowd's going crazy, and I thought, oh, she's going to lose her balance. But no, she manages to put the gloves on the canvas, takes a few seconds at the count of 3 and 4. Referee counts. She's walking to the corner rope to keep her balance up. I think the referee knew the fight was over. The fight was already coming to an end, so she just gave it to her. Count to 8. Fight's over. Are you okay? Ding, ding, ding. I think the referee knew the fight was over, so it didn't matter. Yeah, my judging here, ladies and gentlemen, was guys, I judge this as a 98 to 91 score for Shields. The other two judges had 99 to 90 and 97 to 92 by one judge. One had it 100 to 89. A lot of fans had 90 to 99 is what I meant to say. But at the end of the day, there are some moments here or there that had an interesting moment. I love that they show us the replay and you just see Danielle's eyes out of it. But yeah, it is bad that the fight didn't end by knockout, but you look back at it, it is what it is. Shields is an undisputed champion, comes out as the GLOAT, and surprisingly, that was the end of the fight. I look back at this, ladies and gentlemen, and I see this as a great landmark of history that we have all 4 titles in the heavyweight. Surprisingly, the Ring Magazine title was never on the line. I think the linear weight title might be on the line that night, but I look back at it and I'm like, well, it is what it is, but who says you can't blame them? It was a great fight. Claressa Shields is now an undisputed heavyweight champion of the world. It had a lot of great moments here or there in time, but I do look at it as a historical moment in women's boxing. And even though there's not a lot of money in it to be made for women's boxing, like people are saying that women deserve to get some money and other stuff, I did have a pastor that have told us about stuff that there's, well, I don't want to get into the story. If I ever talk about this moment some other time, I'll talk about it in the future. But at the end of the day, $1.5 million, that's a good amount of money for a female. And I think for Claressa Shields, there wasn't a lot of competition in this division, but I think it's going to generate more popularity in the future because we're going to have more than 4 title belts in the women's division for boxing and the heavyweights. So we'll see what happens in the future. So February the 4th, the last show to be live. We have the famous moment. And guys, after trying to look at this from start to finish, history is here. 40 years of professional boxing since 1985 to 2025 has finally came. Guys, in Texas Troubadour Theater, we had history here. And there's not a lot of interesting story moments here other than this. We had a guy named Ryan Diaz, 1-0 in the cruiserweight, gets his second win by knockout. He's from New York, but nothing much there. A heavyweight fighter named Kanja Nathan picks up his second win, gets a jobber guy, just like the other fight talked about. And he's rated number 620. A guy from Super Bantamweight picks up his 5th win in his first draw. Welterweight fight named Devin Parrish, 4-0, takes on a debut fighter, gets a first-round knockout. And these fights are first-round knockouts, except the Ryan Diaz. That's a second-round knockout. But yeah, people are getting their money's worth with hype jobs taking on nobodies. A super middleweight fight named Dyer Kike wins his 9th fight at rank number 187 against a nobody fighter in the first round by knockout. And then we get another first round knockout by a guy named Damari Filson, 3-0, gets his 4th win against another guy that's a jobber. So yeah, there's just fighters that are just hype jobs taking on jobbers. Yeah, those shows happen. It is the way life goes in boxing. And the last 2 fights are nothing much special. So, guys, the main event of the show was a guy named Maydel Sando, 15-0 from the country of Cuba. And it looked like he was going to put in some good work in the fight against the journeyman fighter, nobody named Vaughn Alexander. And I thought to myself, it had some interesting stuff here. I did saw that 8-round fight. And Alexander did put in some interesting work and taking on Maydel and putting a lot of work into him, considering how tired he was after 4 rounds. And then Maydel came back and won a few more rounds and so, and then round 8. But I don't know. I think the journeyman won it 77-75. One judge had 79 to 73, and the other two had 76 even. So yeah, the main event ended really bad, and it was just a really big abysmal problem. So so the show of the ending, the commentators and information were bad. And just to let you viewers know, the environment of that show was so bad. So guys, when you're in Tennessee, you're going to have a lot of musicians, of people playing concerts. But like, the environment was so awkward that they had an American, like a bandstand or something, having people performing on stage. And I'll tell you, there is one musician I didn't like, where they just, like, it was just so bad. Like, there was one moment, like, at the time where they just, I don't know how to say it. It was just so bad. Like, they had singers or someone. And by the way, this was live on YouTube channel named Abrams Boxing, live on YouTube at the time. So take that for what you will. They had a lot of problems with the environment. They did have a loud person on the mic, this or that, and well, to be honest, I wouldn't really say there was much to it, but at the end of the day, there wasn't much to it than it is. But yet again, if I had to talk about this all the time, this would be a long video. But yeah, the real story comes out as this, guys. So we have the information story that the semi-main event of the show before the main event was Oliver McCall versus Gary Cobia. Now, they had some other, so the ring and the environment had an large American flag in the background with musicians, singers behind a bandstand. And I wouldn't say the concerts were that bad. Like, the boxing fights ended with quick knockout sessions, and that's about it. So Oliver McCall is 59 years old. Gary Cobia is 52. And story-wise, was interesting. So they have both fighters entering in the ring. And Oliver McCall is 6'2". Gary 6'4". They're both over 250 pounds in their career. 3 wins, 4 losses for Gary. 60 wins, 14 losses for McCall. And it's even weird because the announcer announcing the fight was so stupid. He said that Gary Cobia had 3 wins and 4 losses, but on BoxRec it also says that Gary has 1 knockout. Now, they don't count the no contest fights that he had, neither McCall. So, but he just said 3 wins and 4 losses, giving it up for Gary Cobia. And then he announces Oliver McCall and just says, hey, 60 wins, 39 wins by knockout, and 14 losses, which, yeah, stupid announcer. I'll say, though, guys, the show is a little bit amateurish, but I guess that's the way it goes. Now, the fight and the show, I wouldn't say is that much to talk about. From a perspective, I wouldn't really say... Guys, there is a lot of amateurish parts in shows like this, but I don't want to get into them because this would be a long video, and I'm over the hour and a half mark. So technically, the fight is this. Oliver McCall has now been fighting for 40 years now, and there's also another fight saying that Oliver McCall is going to fight again. And when I say again, he's going to fight again on March the 18th, back in Nashville in this same event again. So who knows? So the fight starts out this, like Gary's going clockwise, counterclockwise, and McCall looks like a big potato head, like potato with a big tummy gut going on to him. And the commentators do point out that this is almost like a sparring session for Gary because he's just throwing out punches a little bit, just throwing slow jabs, this or that. And McCall is just throwing great jabs. He's studying the length of the fighter. And yeah, that's what I'm seeing here. Like, it just seemed like there wasn't much to it. Like, the first minute of the fight started out pretty soft. Like, I didn't want the fight to end in the first round knockout, but with the fighters that are in their 50s and McCall 59 years old, I just didn't want to see it. Like, it's great to see him continue breaking the record here of a heavyweight champion at the old age, still winning fights, but it is crazy because there is a moment that around the first minute of the fight, like I said, Gary's throwing out punches, sparring him. He's going clockwise around the ring, and McCall throws some interesting punches, scares out Gary at one point, and then throws more punches and stumbles him. And then for some interesting reason, there is a couple fun moments here where he throws a punch, but McCall stops, and there's time that Gary wasn't really putting a lot of performance in. Like, he hasn't been boxing for over a decade, which is crazy. And then he finally corners him to a rope, and then McCall finally throws some punches, hurts him on, and then for some reason I think Gary threw a low blow on McCall, and then McCall backs up, and the referee does nothing about it because this isn't a real major promotional show. It's just an indie promotional pro boxing event. So it doesn't matter. And then it seemed like probably something happened. It seems like Gary's arm is hurt or something because we would wait to realize after the fight is over that Gary had a shoulder problem. And with 40 seconds left of the fight, Oliver throws a right and a left upstairs, and Gary stumbles to a corner rope, but Oliver stops because this is a 6-round fight, and he doesn't want to use all of his energy in the first round, so he just stops because he knows this is going to be an easy win for Gary, so he's not going to use all his energy in the first round, which is smart for him. And then he gets on, throws punches, throws another, and then he corners him to another corner rope. And then Gary clinches him with 15 seconds left of the fight. And then commentators point out with 10 seconds left that Gary's face is bleeding. But yeah, he continues throwing a few more punches, and that's the end of the round. And surprisingly, that's the end of the fight. And by the way, have I forgot to mention that they have interesting, like the ring card girls that were there that night in the performances are pretty fun. I really love the characters and the ring card girls in their suits. It's pretty fun. But yeah, they do show us a stumble in that round of the replay, but that's about it. They show us blood on the chest and the nipples of Gary. And then the round starts, or so we thought round 2 starts, but then it seems like, oh, they're going to call the fight. The coach on Gary's side tells the referee, no more, he's hurt. And then, are you sure this or that, hurt? And then, boom, stops the fight. The commentators thought the fight was going to continue, but nope, the fight ends. Round 1 ending, and that's it. They both hug it out, and that's how it ends. And then we go to the main event, and it ends in a majority draw, and that's the way the show ends. So yeah, it was a great win since, like, Oliver McCall has boxed since November the 2nd, 1985 to now February the 6th, 2025. It was a good win at the time. I wouldn't say it was 4 years left, like if you have to count March, April, May, June, July, August, September, October, like, does Oliver McCall have another 9 more months left in his career? Well, even if he does fight again in March, which I don't think he should, like, yes, if he wins in March 18th, another fight, and then maybe if I was him, wait another few months until November of 2025, and if they're ever going to build him and Mike Tyson fighting in November or something, like, that would be an interesting fight to look at, but at the end of the day, I just think this should be the final fight for Oliver McCall. He got a luck win here. First round knockout, and it's his 40th knockout in his career, 61 wins, and that's the way it should end his career. Oliver McCall doesn't have to prove anything anymore. He proved himself that he can still box a little bit, not that professionally anymore, but he proved himself as he can still do an okay job for what he's doing. And that's all that matters. And even though his last two fights with Stacey Frazier and Gabri Kobia are both in their 50s, probably for the best not to fight anyone else because at that age. So I just say let it go, and that's about it. So what do I have to say about the month of February? Well, we're 6 days into it, but yet again, I do believe that we could witness some interesting stuff here, because I think what people are missing out is that there's a lot of interesting things, and there's a lot more interesting things because I just realized I have like 29% left on my battery here, so my screen's going out. But the thing is, we still have a lot more title fights happening. Guys, we have more events coming as time goes on. We still have more other things going on for the month of February. And I don't want to get into them because I don't want to spoil a lot of stuff. Like, we still have February the 22nd, where we still have a lot of title fights here. And even though Alexander Usyk's promoter and coach told them that he's not going to retire soon or vacate his belts, which means Joey Zhang and Agit Cabello are going to have to fight for their interim WBC belt. And the odds of them having a title shot in the future is 0 if this keeps happening. Yeah, with Daniel Dubois and Joseph Parker and Artur Beterie and Dimitri Bivol, Carlos Adams, Hansa Shiraz and Floyd Schofield and Shakur Stevenson, or even Callum Smith and Joshua Blatzy. All I can say is it's going to be an interesting performance of a show to talk about, but when you look back at today, I will say to myself, you should try to be a little bit more careful when you look at the past. Now, what I'm seeing here is I'm seeing a different perspective of boxing. We still have moments that there's going to be some things that might come down, crashing down, because whoever's going to win on February the 22nd in the Kingdom Arena, their careers might be done for whoever loses. And I'm afraid that Joey Zhang, for all this time of him trying to get a title shot for the last few years, is going to be a failure because it's just a Ukraine boxer in the heavyweight fighting against British fighters. And Agit Cabello is deserving a heavyweight title shot, but I don't think he's going to fight because it's going to be Daniel Dubois or Joseph Parker versus Alexander Usyk. And I don't even want to know if we do have another undisputed heavyweight title shot. I might as well want to see Alexander Usyk maybe not fight anymore. I do see Alexander Usyk having a couple more fights in his career, but I think it's probably for the best to try to settle it down and see what will come. I do see Alexander Usyk having a couple more fights left in his career, probably until 2026. But by 2026, I think his career's done. Like, at this moment, guys, like Alexander Usyk, you people have to understand. Like, if you had to type in everything you have to know about Alexander Usyk, is that he's 38 years old. And to be honest, he just turned 38 a couple weeks ago. So at this moment, or even 3 weeks ago, I do want to see that if he does have a couple fights left in him, I do see that. But by 2026, I do think that if he does win another fight in 2025 and maybe one more fight in 2020, like if he has 2 more fights in 2025 or so, or maybe one, or maybe just one fight again in 2025 and another one in 2026, depends on what his fighters are. I think after that, I think that's the end of his career. I don't think he just has nothing to prove. I think at that age, I don't think Alexander Usyk is going to be competitive as he was after his Joshua fights and Fury fights, but who knows? I might be wrong. You have to understand, if Joseph Parker does win against Dubois, which I want him to win because Dubois is just a waste of time, we'll just have to wait and see. Like, I want him to take on Agit Cabello or even Joey Zhang in the future. I want him to fight against one of those two guys instead. I don't want to see Usyk take on another British fighter. But yet again, we're going to have to wait and see in the future. But for now, guys, thank you viewers for watching this GLOAT podcast. Sorry for that this became an hour and 40 to an hour and 50 minutes long. That's crazy. 1 hour and 49 minutes long. Crazy. But yeah, again, guys, that's the way life goes. I hope you viewers enjoyed this episode. Thanks for watching. And with that being said, the Fox Wolf is out. We'll see you in the Kingdom Arena on February the 22nd. Goodbye, everyone.